It's Carl Verheyen here on Linea Rock, and I'm here with Barbara, and it's a beautiful sunny day in Milano.
Thanks, Carl. Welcome to Linea Rock and welcome to Italy again, since you come here very often, so we are happy to have you here again.
Thank you, grazie.
So you're here for some clinics and some live shows as well?
Just solo.
Just solo. Okay, would you explain what's happening in these clinics and in these particular live shows?
Well, let's see. The clinics are like, I try to inspire the people. You know, I try. There's guitar players of all ages and all levels of proficiency. Yeah. Some really good ones, some beginners. The good ones, the real good ones that have been playing for 10 or 20 years, can really use what I have to say. The beginners, it's going whoosh, right over their heads. But I try to inspire them and let them know all this is possible on this instrument. You know, so the guitar is unlimited in what you can do with it. So that's what I try to do. I turn these clinics into a little bit of a concert too. I always play some songs, and I don't use any backing tracks. Instead, I choose to just play solo guitar and sometimes sing and stuff like that. So,
good. What kind of songs? I mean, just your solo material, or you put inside some of the songs from the bands you collaborated with?
Yeah, a little of everything. You know,
okay.
Some of my own solo pieces, and then some blues, some Ray Charles tunes, songs off my old albums, and even once in a while a Supertramp song.
Okay, for the persons that don't know very well Carl, he's like one of the best and most wanted session men in the world. Oh, so that's great. And seems you are highly requested. And you collaborated with Bee Gees, Cher, Dolly Parton, a lot of Eagles as well. A lot of different kind of artists. And also a guitar player in 1998. Voted you as the best studio musician, which was flattering.
Yeah, that was cool. I have a little trophy at home.
Okay, so how was that for you?
That was a real surprise, you know, because there's lots of good studio guitar players in Los Angeles. Steve Lukather was at the time doing it, Mike Landau, Dan Huff. I mean, I have colleagues that I really believe are fantastic, you know. But I always had too much music inside me to just stay in the studios.
Okay.
Because a lot of studio work, I mean, yeah, you can play on high-level records and stuff like that, but a lot of studio work can be TV or movies or jingles, you know, commercials and stuff like that, and it's sort of a 9-to-5 job in some ways.
Okay.
Know? So.
And can that be frustrating as well? Being, you know, such a great musician that have a lot to deliver to the crowd.
Right. I mean, the way to not get frustrated, the secret, is to have a separate career as a solo artist, as an artist, and start your own band. Because when you're working for another artist, you really have to respect that person's musical vision and try to deliver something that really puts it over the top. And it might not be my musical vision. I might believe in something the opposite, but that's why I started my own band.
Okay. So you're doing these clinics, but you've also been like a music teacher for about 20 years, 25 years now? I
guess so. I mean, I don't know how long it's been.
And I guess that's not an easy job. And why this choice? And do you live it as a mission, in a sense?
Well, I believe that it's my generation's job to pass it down to the next generation. And so that is a bit of a mission. And it's fun. It's fun to teach. If you can do it, it's fun. I teach at USC, University of Southern California, a little bit, and Musicians Institute a little bit. I do something there once a week, you know. So it's not a lot, but enough.
Okay. And how young is the pupils that you have at school?
At those places, they're college, you know,
okay,
so 18, 19, 20, and up.
Okay,
so.
And I know you're the best in improvising. That's your special quality. And is that a different world? I mean, besides studying, and is that something very difficult to teach? Which kind of basics do you need to have, you know, that approach to improvising?
That's a really good question. You do need a lot of fundamentals, basics, you know. And so they are the building blocks, the tools like scales and arpeggios and tonal centers and chords and stuff like that. But once you just get beyond that, the world of improvising is very artistic. You know, it's the way you hear a particular key center.
Yeah.
You know, so if it's the key of C minor, Do minore, I hear it completely different than Eddie Van Halen or Pat Martino or Joe Pass or Wes Montgomery or Yngwie.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
guitar players can really express themselves this way.
And how was for you? How did you start? I mean, this love for improvising.
I think I got started back in the 60s when I first heard Eric Clapton play.
Okay.
Because I have a feeling that most of what George Harrison played on the Beatles records were worked out parts, solos. You know, I mean, he worked them out. But I could tell Hendrix was really improvising and Eric Clapton was really improvising. And especially on some of that live stuff. So that's when I realized that there's another level of guitar playing beyond popular music that has to do with being a virtuoso in rock and roll. And then I discovered jazz, and that's when I really understood what improvising was.
And how different is a clinic than the school? Two very different approaches?
Well, in Italy it's different because they have to be translated.
Okay.
So I'll have to say something and then stop and wait for it to be translated.
And make sure that everything's got translated
correctly.
Yeah. So,
which I don't know.
So which is the weirdest question that you got on clinics?
Well, in the United States, this one guy raised his hand and said, "How much money do you make a year?" I said,
so that was his point.
Yeah, I said, that's a tacky question. I said, that's not cool.
Okay. So your instructional video, Intervallic Rock Guitar, is still considered a must after 20 years. And your books are very famous as well.
Oh, good.
No doubt you've always been one step ahead with your improvising style and your approach. This is how people perceived you. Is this virtuoso feeling, I mean, correct that we have, you know, from your style? And do you think it fits? Do you feel yourself a virtuoso?
Well, it's what I'm always striving to be. So I'm comfortable with it, and yet I'm never satisfied. You know, I'd rather be called a virtuoso guitar player than a member of Supertramp or a studio player or this or that. You know, I'd much rather just be called that and then try as hard as I can to achieve that.
Yes.
So.
How long have you been in Supertramp?
I joined in 1985, so what is that, 25, 27, I don't know.
A lot.
10, 25, 20, 27 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And which is the best memories that you have of that experience?
Well, it's a really fun band and a great group of guys, and some of them are very close friends, and the leader, I consider him to be a mentor of mine. You know, he's always led by example, and I try to carry that into my own band, that idea of no matter where you are, you give them the very best show you can, whether it's a little town with only 5,000 people in the audience or 77,000 seat festival like we did last July, you know. Yeah. So
Supertramp had a lot of, you know, hits, top 10 singles, but you are all well-respected musicians. Is that something that it's not very common?
I think you're right, and the other thing about the band is that it's real. We don't play to any tracks.
Okay.
There's nothing recorded on tape. There's a gong, a big gong sound in Crime of the Century. That's the only thing that is on tape.
Okay.
So everything else is played live, which I think is really special nowadays.
Why not having a real gong as well?
They should, I know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's hard to get a microphone to collect it, you know.
All right. So you studied jazz, classic, and country style, but you are considered a top modern blues rock, you know, back to basics guitarist. How come?
That's a good question. I studied really everything, and I think what is the most real for me is blues rock, you know, rock and roll and blues. I can play country, I can play classical, I can play shred guitar and tapping and all this stuff, but it's not what I really feel. So, but I can do it all, you know, but I think you always have to find what is the most real for you and go for that.
Okay. So blues rock is your...
I would say, yeah.
Okay, your field. Okay. And was this exactly your vision from the very beginning? I mean, what you're doing for a living since the beginning?
Yes,
okay.
Since I was 11.
This was your plan, and you achieved it. So
I never had any other job.
Okay.
I was a box boy at a market, which means you take the groceries and the bananas and everything and put them in a bag and hand it to for 2 months because I had to pay off a Les Paul guitar I bought when I was 16.
Yeah.
And that was my only job.
Okay. You're lucky.
Yeah, I'm lucky, yeah.
Talented and lucky.
Oh, thank you.
Very gifted. What kind of music do you listen at home or in the car?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, I listen to lots of different things. We listen to classical music on Sunday morning when we're making our cappuccinos and omelets, and let's see, I listen to country music, I listen to rock and roll, blues. I listen to a lot of jazz too, quite a bit of jazz. I was just playing a Sonny Rollins record at home before I left to come here, and this morning I was listening to some Brazilian music from my computer in my hotel room.
Wow.
So pretty much everything.
Everything, okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, the trick?
I think so. I mean, you know, there's two kinds of music, good music and bad music, right?
Okay.
And so I just listen to the good stuff.
Okay. So you started very young. Do you come from a family of musicians or something?
A little bit. My dad played the drums, and he could play one or two songs on the piano. But both of my grandmothers had pianos and were good piano players.
Okay.
And I inherited my grandmother, who was from Mexico. Her name is Julieta Ortiz.
Yeah.
And I inherited her grand piano, and I have it at home.
Okay.
So.
How is your setup at the moment? Amplifier, guitars, and...
Oh, you don't want to know. I've got 70 guitars and
My God.
45 amplifiers and maybe another 5 or 6 I keep in Europe, and hundreds of pedals and 5 pedal boards and mandolins and banjos and dobros and 12 strings and baritones and everything.
So you mean, I mean, you pick, you know, different instruments on the style you're going to play,
right.
And you choose... Okay.
If I do a recording session, I have a company, a cartage company, deliver 24 guitars, minimum, you know. If I'm doing my own record, I might take more like 60, you know, just because I want to have all the options available.
Oh my God!
So.
Just to have them all available, but you don't use them all. I mean,
right? You might try 5 until you find one that's perfect for the sound.
And if you have to pick your favorite one, do you have a favorite baby?
I do. I'm a big fan of the Fender Stratocaster, and recently I've had a signature guitar made by a different company called LSL in Los Angeles, and they're making basically a copy of one of my vintage Strats, Fender Strats, because those old ones are worth $40,000 now, you know, or even more over here. So it's better to not take them on the road and take something like a copy, but this copy sounds just as good, so I'm very happy.
Do you have a signature model? Okay. How many have you, had through the years?
Really, I've had a signature acoustic, and then another one that's very expensive, and then one signature electric. But I've stayed away from that for reasons of I don't want to be exclusive with one guitar. You know? I want to be able to play anything I feel like any day of the week. What
did you demand on your signature model? What that guitar have?
It has to be lightweight.
Okay.
Light guitars are better.
All right.
Heavy guitars don't vibrate as well.
Okay.
And it has to have the pickups just the right output so that they're not too big and overpower an amplifier, and they're not too light. So those two things, and then the vibrato bar and the tone controls, lots of different little things.
I know you use the whammy bar in very particular ways.
Yeah, are you a guitar player?
No, I'm a drummer.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but you know, my boyfriend is a guitar player, so I live in a guitar world as well.
Great. All right.
So, how did you develop that style? I mean, how did you think, you know, to develop a particular style on the whammy bar?
It seems to me that the bar that most people use it for what I call stunt guitar, which means just dive bombs.
Okay.
And I've played on a lot of movies in the past where I've needed to do that. You know?
Okay.
I played on an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where they wanted me to sound like a motorcycle revving. So I played low notes and like that. And I played on a movie called The Crow where they wanted me to sound like the guitar was being thrown off the top of a building.
Yeah.
Did a harmonic with a big dive bomb, you know. So, but I thought over the years that there would be a more musical adaptation to it.
Okay.
So I started to work on making the intervals that the bar can do constant. That's how I developed it.
Okay. Which is the artist that surprised you the most of the ones, among the ones you collaborated with? And what does it take to play with Carl?
Wow. Let me think. It's too difficult a question because there's been too many, but I just played on a recording last week in LA. There was a Brazilian guy, and I produced it with him. I co-produced it with an engineer. And when I was working up his arrangements, I was thinking, oh boy, this is going to be just one of those records I do and forget about. But they just sent me a track today on the email, you know, MP3. And I listened to it and I went, this is coming out really well. You know, it's Latin music. And it surprised me a lot. So all I can remember is 1 week ago.
Okay.
So.
And how different is the approach to recording now that, you know, everybody use computers the most compared, you know, to what you were doing during the 70s? Is that a very different approach? And do you miss anything of the analogic stuff?
I mean, the playback in the control room never seems to be as glorious as it used to be from analog tape.
Yeah.
And you could work on your sound really well, and you could listen to yourself in the headphones, then come in to the control room and hear it on the big speakers, and it was just overwhelming how wonderful it sounded, the depth of the recording. And I think digital doesn't quite capture that depth. I mean, they're getting closer every year, but it's not quite as wonderful and warm. And I try to use studios that still have that feeling, you know.
Is that maybe quicker now?
Much quicker, yeah. And you can fix things much easier, and you can put takes together much easier. In other words, the way we do a vocal is we sing it 9 times and then take the best version of each line and comp that over to a final track, and then it sounds amazing. But nobody can ever sing it that well, you know, perfectly.
But the fact of doing things quicker maybe sometimes can be not good for on the creative side, because you do it soon, and maybe sometimes ideas need time. So
you used to have to wait till the tape rewinded, and you don't have to wait that long anymore. It's just instant. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. So. Actually, I played on a recording session here in Milano yesterday.
Oh, really?
For a guy from Genoa who has a CD coming out, and we did it at a studio, and I could have just unlimited times to try and fix these 3 bars, you know. Okay. And we did it in a half an hour. It wasn't that long, the whole solo. But
what's the name of the guy? Can you tell that or not yet?
I don't know his last name. His first name was Paolo.
Okay. Which is the best soundtrack that you worked at, in your opinion?
Wow, that's a good question. One that I really, really liked many years ago was a movie called Milagro Beanfield Wars. And it was by Dave Grusin. Okay. And it was Lee Ritenour and me and Angel Romero, the classical player. Okay. And we had a great time. Beautiful music. I just played on Mission Impossible 4, and that was really fun. We did music from Mumbai, you know, so Bollywood, and we did all kinds of like Lawrence of Arabia music. You know, it was wonderful. Okay, fun.
And if somebody would like to check the best thing that you did with Supertramp, which one would you suggest to pick?
There's a record that I like that we did in 2001, 2002 called Slow Motion.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was a big hit record or anything. It was, but it was the last one we did, and I thought that came out really nicely. It's a little darker, kind of like Crime of the Century, that old stuff. And there's also a record we did, a live record in 1997 called It Was the Best of Times.
Okay.
And I like that one too. Those are nice.
Great.
So.
So you're very highly requested, as we already said, as a session man, and you do a lot of things. How can you find the time to do also your solo stuff? I mean, you told me before that you need that to have your identity, and but I mean, is it very difficult to manage with it and find the time to do it?
It seems like you have to make the solo stuff a priority.
Okay.
And say, I'm going to do this, I'm blocking out this month to go. And when you do, of course, you always lose work at home in Los Angeles. But it's something I will remember, you know, playing my own songs in front of people that are singing along in the front row is I will remember that much more than I'll remember yet another session.
John Patitucci and Chad Wakerman were your first experiences, your baptism, as we can say. What do you remember of those experiences?
Well, you know, I mean, I was in many bands before I met those guys, but in about 1977, 78, I was in a band with those guys, playing jazz and like sambas and bossa novas and stuff like that. And we had a two night a week gig. Okay. It was really fun. And I still play with Chad all the time. Okay. John moved to the East Coast, so I don't see him as much. But I saw him about a year ago, though, and he's exactly the same. So
do you keep also connections with everybody as friends?
Try to, yeah.
That's great.
As a matter of fact, Chad did my band's tour last September, October in Europe. And he just emailed me this morning. So we just talked this morning, as a matter of fact. So you
must have a very thick agenda of contacts. You know, when you have to go on tour, you can open it and choose simply what is that.
Yeah, I try to keep the same band, right?
Okay.
You know, but my drummer, Wilfredo Reyes Jr., he was busy with Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac last October and September. So I looked through the phone book and found somebody else. I couldn't cancel my tour, you know. So.
Okay. And is there any artist you did not collaborate with that you would love to?
Well, there was a guy that has passed away named Joe Zawinul, and he played in the Weather Report. Okay. I would have loved to work with him because I've learned a lot of my style by listening to him. He's a big influence. And I've always been a big Paul McCartney fan, so that would have been nice. But a friend of mine, Rusty Anderson, plays in his band, and he doesn't want to give it up.
Oh, okay.
So.
And what about Stanley Clarke, the Fusion Days?
Yeah.
How was that?
I just did, I have a funny experience with him. I auditioned for a band that he was putting together with Stuart Copeland, and I got the gig. They hired me.
Wow.
But I couldn't do it because it just paid terrible money. And I just said, no, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. And then Stanley started calling me for his little sessions, TV shows, movies, things like that. So I haven't seen him in a long time, though.
You should call him.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on? Yeah.
Okay. Among all the records that you did with all different artists, which one makes you more proud of?
Wow. That's a hard question. Man. Because I have like 2 big long rows of CDs.
All the stuff you did?
Yeah, I try to get a copy of everything.
All right.
Wow. I mean, it would have to be my own records, but you're saying other artists. Let me think. Wow. I don't think I can answer it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go home and look and see what it was. I played on a Chad Wackerman record that came out really nice with Alan Holdsworth.
Okay.
Called 40 Reasons. That was a nice one.
But you're proud of everything you did? I mean, you don't do something if you don't like, or sometimes if the money is good, you do it.
You got to do it and then give them a fake name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
So you worked also for B.B. King and Jose Feliciano?
Those were some jingles I did.
Oh,
yeah.
just jingles,
Just
not
jingles.
songs.
No, but they were songs. There's a product called One Touch Diabetes Tester.
Okay.
Where if you have diabetes, I guess you do
Yes,
this
you
and you
can.
get a quick blood sample and it
Alright.
says what you need. So for the Latin market, I produced Jose doing a song about it, and it was a beautiful song. And then for the English-speaking market, B.B. King was the spokesman.
Okay.
So I got to produce both of those guys on those jingles. It was fun.
Did you meet them?
Uh-huh.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
How was that? I mean, they're
It was really fun.
legends.
Yeah, Jose was a real character. He was talking and carrying on, telling jokes and everything, and we played guitars together and had a good time. So, same with B.B. King too.
Wow. Being a session man a lot sometimes do not put you in the spotlight. Is that something that you miss? I mean, you did a lot of things, but maybe, sometimes people don't know the name of the person that did, that.
Yeah.
You're not, you're very famous.
Not really.
On people that know talent and that know, great guitar players. But I mean, in the spotlight, it's different. I mean, do you miss that, or you live?
I think I get enough, recognition
Yeah.
from fans of my own music
Yes.
and Supertramp and some of those things,
Yeah.
to where I don't miss it. I've actually played on some big hit records that I can't tell you.
Okay.
Because I replaced the real guitar player in the band, and that's happened twice, for
Okay.
me. So, and I know it happens for a lot of us. I know a drummer who replaced some Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He
Yeah.
was Palmer on a record, So I mean, this happens,
How is that difficult? I mean, they call you and they say you have to play that style so that people cannot, recognize it's not him, or
Yeah, you have to try to play in his style,
Yeah.
and you have to keep it secret.
Yeah. Okay.
I've told people before, but I better not say it on the radio.
And having done, so many things, how can you keep your identity strong through years?
I think by practicing a lot.
Okay.
I just try to practice every day, and stay true to my musical vision, and think about the next project and the next tour and the next album. I think about it a lot.
Yeah.
So.
And from your solo albums, which is your favorite one?
Well, that's always a good question. One I really like is called Take One Step, and it's 2 CDs ago.
Okay.
And then after that was a record called Trading Eights, which was, I got to collaborate with a bunch of guitar players, friends of mine. Steve Morse, Robin Ford, a slide player named Rick Vito that played in Fleetwood Mac for a while, Scott Henderson, Albert Lee.
Wow.
And one more. Was it? Oh, Joe Bonamassa.
Okay.
So it was really a fun project to do. And I'm proud of that one. And then we just came out with a live CD called The Road Divides.
Yes.
And that one feels good too.
That was from 2011, last year.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
And there's also some inedit songs in it.
Somewhat?
Some never released songs before.
Yeah.
They're from the past, or
There's there's a new one that's never been released, and then I did a cover song of All You Need Is Love by the Beatles.
Oh wow.
So.
And there's a DVD as well.
Yeah.
With that. Okay.
Yeah, it came out. What happened is I came out with the DVD, and then people were saying, "Gosh, I wish I had a CD of this. I'm trying to make the DVD audio onto a CD so I can play it in my car." So I said, "Then I better do it."
Okay.
So we did it.
And is that like something that, if we pick that, we can know your creative world a little bit better? In a
especially
definitive way?
Yeah, because the live thing is just the raw talent, and it's 3-piece band.
Yeah.
And we really just took the entire live performance, and sometimes if my voice went away from the microphone because I had to look down and see what's going on with the guitar, there's one song in particular where I had to finish those lines, so I had to go in and re-sing a couple of lines where they went away from the microphone, like that. So that's the only fixes we did. I didn't fix any guitars or any drums or bass, and so it's really the raw thing.
You don't need to. And do you approach songwriting and playing in a different way when you write for yourself or for other artists?
For other artists, I'm mostly an arranger because I've done a lot of producing, and yeah, but I do help them write their songs. You know, there's a young girl I produced last year who's only 18, and all her songs were the same 3 chords. And I said, well, do you like Brian Wilson? She goes, oh yeah. And so I'd say, well, he would use this chord, and she would go, let's do it. And then I'd say, do you like Paul Simon? He would do a dominant 7th chord here. And then I'd say, you know, what John Lennon would do in this song is make this little middle 8 section, you know, so I kind of co-wrote it with him, you know. I do that.
So you like the Beatles, right?
I do. I like the Beatles. I like so much stuff, you know.
You're more a Beatles man or a Rolling Stone man?
Wow. Probably a Beatles, but I really appreciate Mick Jagger. What a great singer.
Yeah.
And I love the way Keith puts the band together. The sound of that band to me is Keith Richards and Charlie Watts, the way they play together.
Yes.
Really feels good. So.
You did also an acoustic record and tour with Carl Reiser, the Austrian jazz guitarist. And it was Carl meets Carl, right?
Yeah.
Okay. With the C and with the K.
Right.
Okay. And also you did by yourself a solo guitar improvisations, which was acoustic as well. How do you think you express yourself the best? Plugged or unplugged?
Wow, that's a good question too. Probably with the electric guitar, because I've spent many, many years working on the tone and getting it exactly right. But the acoustic guitar is like a difficult woman for me, you know what I mean? And when I'm going to do a solo concert or a solo tour, I have to practice so hard. I have to practice 3 or 4 hours a day on that material for at least 2 weeks before I can go do it.
Okay.
You know, and then only then am I up to speed on it. So.
When you very first started, you started with an acoustic or with directly with electric guitar?
Acoustic.
Acoustic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was your. And do you remember the very first time you played a guitar?
Well, it was probably at my friend Freddie's house. He had an older sister, a beautiful, tall brunette woman named Debbie. She was probably 16 and I was 10, and I just she was beautiful and her guitar was beautiful. So I'd go over to Freddie's to play with him, but I'd go upstairs and try her guitar. And then my dad had a little tiny Gretsch ukulele, which I still have.
Ooh.
And then I begged for 1 year for a guitar, and they finally gave it to me on my 11th birthday. And
that was a Fender Strat?
No, it was an acoustic 30-euro guitar called a St. George, made in Japan. And it was, you know, it was a terrible guitar, but I learned to play some Bob Dylan and some Byrds and Beatles songs on it, and then they finally gave me an electric. And
do you still own that guitar?
No.
No.
I don't know what happened to it. Yeah.
That's bad. Okay. What's the trick to become one of the best, 10 guitarists in the world?
Wow. Man, I'm still working on it. The trick, let's see. I just think you have to envision that you're going to do this, and you're going to just nothing's going to stop you, and you're just going to keep working on it until you do it.
Okay.
You know? I think that's
and work
the trick.
hard.
Work hard, yeah. If you work hard, you will succeed.
Yeah.
In everything.
In everything, it's true. Okay, so this is a tough one. 3 guitarists which are your personal top in the history of blues and rock.
Wow. Mike Bloomfield, Eric Clapton, and the third one have to be Jimi Hendrix.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 3 overrated guitarists in the history of music.
Ooh, that would be a nasty thing to say, wouldn't it? Overrated. I mean, I shouldn't say.
Okay,
I can tell you when we're off the air.
Okay.
Because I don't like to say bad things
and I
about
keep
anybody.
it secret.
Yeah.
Okay. And the 3 underrated guitarists?
Underrated, wow.
You can tell that.
I'll tell you one. I think George Harrison was really underrated.
Yeah.
I think he had some really good influences like Chet Atkins and Carl Perkins that he really pulled off really well. If you look at the opening chord on Hard Day's Night, played on a 12 string. He is playing a chord that you have to push down on 2 strings, so it's actually 2 sets of strings with 1 finger, and then another finger plays this string, another finger here, and then his thumb has to come over the top. So he's playing all 6 strings with 5 fingers, including thumb, you know. And even on my Rickenbacker 12 string, I have a one from 1966, so it's right in that era that his was. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's really underrated.
Okay. And that's one.
That's one, yeah. Yeah.
So you need 2 more.
I need 2 more. Wow, that would be hard. Let me think. Gosh. Everybody loves Mike Bloomfield that's heard his best work.
Okay.
But I don't think he got the recognition he deserved because of his drug problems and flaming out, you know. Let me see. Who else, man? Dickie Betts was pretty cool.
Okay.
From the Allman Brothers.
Yes.
You know, he was a bit underrated, but he had such a nice feel and a great tone. But everybody always talks about Duane Allman, but I always thought Dickie had a great thing going too, you know.
When you go to a show and see somebody else play, do you most, look at them or listen? I mean, how is your approach, since you have so many technical, you have a huge technical talent, so is that difficult for you to divide the heart from the technique when
No, the heart is what I go for.
Okay, you go for it first. Yeah. Okay.
There is something, though, that is related to what you just said. There is, as I'm listening to music, we were listening to a record in the car yesterday, a CD by Warren Haynes.
Yes.
And I'm listening along, and I can tell every chord change that's going by.
All right.
I go, okay, that's a B minor, then he's going down to G, then he's going down to D, and then he's playing an A, and then a B flat diminished to the B minor. I can hear every progression going by. But I try to turn that off and just listen to the music. But then sometimes my interest will go, wow, that's a great progression. What's he doing? And I'll try to do that too.
Was that a government mule?
No, it's his new record called Man in Motion, which I really liked. It's a really nice record.
Okay, so what's next for Carl Verheyen?
Well, from here, from Italy, on Monday I fly to Boston and I meet the band, my band. They're flying from California to Boston. We all meet in the airport and we do a show there. Then we go to Philadelphia and do a show in a big theater there. Then 2 shows in New York City at the Iridium, big jazz club there. Then we fly to San Francisco and do a show there. And then I'm off. And our next tour is West Coast, from Seattle down to San Diego.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Pretty busy, I guess.
Yeah, that's in June.
Okay.
And I know I've got a record booked the first 2 weeks of August to record this Latin guy that I was doing last week. He's going to finish his record then.
Doing so many things, do you have time for anything else? I mean, do you dedicate your time also to your family? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really do. The weekends I try to keep free if I'm not working, and I really enjoy my home.
Okay.
I've got a great home, and we have a wonderful garden that we've been working on lately, and we just put in some vegetable garden area, and it's my wife and I love to get out there and plant little things, and it's therapeutic.
And how patient is your wife, since you're always on the road?
I try not to be on the road more than 4 months a year.
Okay, that's great.
And last year was about 3.5, and maybe more, because I did 2 Supertramp tours, one in Canada, and then about 3 weeks in France doing some festivals. Yeah. So she's okay with it. She likes to come.
Okay.
Yeah, so I flew her to Barcelona and Lisbon last year, and my son, I flew him to Toronto, Canada for a week. So she can see the world on vacation while you work. Yeah.
That's a good.
I just don't want her to go shopping.
Great. One very last thing. Did you ever say no to any huge project or a huge, famous artist that called you for a gig?
I have a few times, yeah. I turned down George Michael.
Wow.
Because the music was going to be, the guitar player only came out for half the show, and the rest of the guitar was on tape. And I didn't want to sit around, and the songs that I would be playing, there was no room to express my own self, and it just seemed like a real backup sideman gig that I didn't want to do. And I also auditioned for Don Henley, and they said, no, we need a guy that knows the other guitar parts, and you learned these, the first guitar parts, we need somebody who knows the second. And I said, well, I could do that. And they said, no, we leave a week from Friday. So I went home and said, okay, whatever. And then I got the Supertramp gig, right on the heels of this, you know. And this was going to be a much bigger tour, you know, and longevity, you know, more tours after that. And the Don Henley thing didn't seem that big of a deal. But then Don Henley called me back and said, we tried 5 more guys and the whole band voted they want you. And we leave Friday. And it was like Tuesday already. So I said, can't do it. So, and there have been little tours I've turned down for reasons.
Do you regret that? Or
well, I wish it would have lined up. I had to turn down my friend Alan Holdsworth, who's a fusion guitar player. He asked me to be in his band for doing a 2-guitar tour, but I was right in the middle of a huge record project that lasted a month, and I was getting paid so much money that I said, I just can't leave. I can't leave. I've committed to this, and you know, can't do it. So that I really regret. And we've recorded together on my first album, and I know we will again because we get together and play sometimes.
No Borders is the first album. Okay.
Yeah, he played on that a little bit, and we will again sometime, I'm sure. And of course, we played together on this Chad Wackerman album. Okay.
Very last thing. Which is the other instrument that you express yourself the best beside guitar?
I would love to say my singing voice, but I know that I got a long way to go on that. I can play a little bit of keyboards, a little bit of banjo. I can play the dobro and the mandolin, and I can play bass. Okay. And my piano playing was pretty good for a while there, but I developed a technique called hybrid picking many years ago with fingernails, and it just doesn't work so well on the piano. You know. Yes. So I think the guitar's got to be it for me. Okay. So.
And which is the most rock thing that you like? The most hard, heavy thing that you would pick?
Well, I'll tell you, I like a lot of hard rock. You know, I like the some of that old Van Halen stuff is really great, and I'm good friends with Scott Gorham and Thin Lizzy. I like his band, and that's a good question.
Okay, so you are also a rock guy.
Yeah,
so
yeah, definitely.
Great, great. So. Okay, thanks so much for your time, Carl.
Thank you, Barbara.
It's been a pleasure for us.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.